So I'm excited to have you here today. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So this show I was really looking forward to doing, and I thought this is a great first start to it because it being called Between Worlds. Well, we're just like, going back and forth between 3D, 5D things, physical things, and metaphysical things, and also as healers, experiencing different things, and had a whole different frequencies and just live between worlds and our experiences. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And a lot of my work, I feel, is like in that liminal space, like that in-between space, right? The void.
Yeah.
So it's perfect.
Yeah. So do you want to tell me a little bit about what's going on lately and just fill me in?
Yeah. So I've been a practitioner, shamanic practitioner for 7 years now.
Yeah.
I've had my practice, work that I do on myself, right? Like with my inner teacher and my inner shaman, but then also with others. And in the last, I would say 2 years, there's been so much chaos in my personal life that could not be ignored, right? And there's so many triggers and things that come up.
Right.
People in my personal life that I see as these mirrors for these parts of me, my shadows, this subconscious part of me that I want to ignore and hide and run from.
Yeah.
And obviously I have to look at them. So the last 2 years was me really looking at these things in other people and reflections and relationships. And I noticed it was starting to really ripple into the work that I do with others. Because I noticed my clients were having very similar life situations that I was having, where it was becoming like so clear to me that all the work I was doing was attracting people that needed that same kind of work done for them.
Yeah.
So it was almost like I was getting a code, and then a client would come in, I'd be like, oh, this is what that code can apply to, and it would give me deeper access to these things that not that I didn't have access to, but until you really live it and embody it and integrate it as a part of you, I was feeling like, I was able to work with people in a much deeper way. But the last 6 months for me have been a time of big change, huge transition, where it was almost like intangible for a really long time and felt really frustrating to even speak on, because there's this almost shame as a healer, like, how could your life still be in turmoil? How could you be in that darkness? And you're in these depths, I call it, like in the void, and being in that muck, the mess of life that you typically would want to not be in, right? Or but to be aware of not spiritually bypassing that, to really feel it and admit and say, yes, I'm here, I'm in the void, where am I going? And maybe there isn't a destination, right? Maybe it's just I'm in this waiting space. That's what I kind of see the void as, that liminal waiting space, like a almost like a station between where you're going next. So you're aware of who you were, maybe not so clear on who you are right now, and who you're going to be and where you're going next also might be unclear. But you feel it. You feel that you're being pulled towards something.
That transition.
Yeah, it's like this literal metamorphosis that you're going through, and you're kind of aware of it as it's happening because everything else is crumbling and fading, and being destroyed. Yes, you can look around your life and say, "Wow,
I must be in a transition. I must be in the void."
Yes, and everything feels like a death.
Yeah,
every ending, of a cycle, or every ending of a relationship, or every, integration of that part of you that you never really got to give love to. Once you embrace it, it's like, I can let that part of me that felt so much shame about that die.
Right.
I can let that part of me that felt, that grief or that rage or that, suppressed emotion, I can let that die within me. And then these other things you make space for. So even though it's like, everything's up in flames, I feel like it's that phoenix rising moment where, yes, there are flames, but you're rising above it. And you're morphing into something else. You might not be able to see what form you're taking yet, And that's where I'm at.
Which part are you at? Rising?
I think the rising, like I'm still dying. I know there's still ashes all around me, and I can look around and I'm seeing the destruction and kind of like surrendering to it, or like loving it for like what's not here anymore. Loving how much space there is to say like, what do I really want right now? What do I even desire? Right? Like, what is my definition of success? What does it mean for me to be healthy and for me to be whole? What it, like, for me, not for anybody else, but for me personally, what am I feeling right now? Because I feel like that's changed over the years so many times. Being successful, what did that mean? You know, now I have a lot of things that in my mind mean I'm very successful, but there's still this like more.
There's more, right?
There's more, and that more is what I'm moving towards.
Right. Yeah.
And what I'm like becoming, you know, aware of is there's more, it's possibility, there's potential there that I couldn't see before.
Right.
So the flames are maybe like dying out and there's some ash and I can see through the debris, there's light somewhere. I can see it, it's shining, there's some rays. And coming out of it, I'm just excited to see what's next and been really curious with myself.
Right. So yeah, just coming into this new version of self, right? Yeah. And I feel like it's a never ending process of becoming this next version of yourself all the time. And this just continuing spiral of death and rebirth into new versions. And then, right, like being in that state of the ashes and, you know, kind of not knowing what's next, but the phoenix, what you were saying. But with that phoenix energy comes that is also that passion and that desire and that inspiration. I would say for me right now, and a lot of people in my experience talk about like reflecting back and everything, it seems just a lot of people are just kind of like have flat lines with, you know, just inspiration, desire, or which way to go, and kind of like, you know, in that unknown. Yeah. How many times have you been in the void before?
So as you said, this is a continual process. And when you're choosing to evolve, which is conscious evolution, right? You're aware that you're evolving and you're choosing it. You're making distinct choices, taking aligned action. You know, you're moving intentionally through your life.
Right.
So I would say my first like really big spiritual awakening happened when I was 19. I was very suicidal, very depressed, and my spirituality, or rather my inherent psychic gifts, became so obvious, having these like really vivid dreams and seeing full form figures.
Amazing.
That was when I was like, is this something deeper? Like, is it something in my mind making this happen, or is this really my truth and I'm running from it?
Right.
I'm numbing it and trying. Then again, I would say when I was about 24, something similar. And now again, within the last year or so, once I turned 30. And like looking back, all these spiritual awakenings happened at times right before something really amazing were to happen in my life. Like, and so I know this time now, I have this like veil, right, over my eyes. And it's almost like I can't wait to look back at this time and be like, no, look, you were right there.
Right.
You were doing all the things. You were planting seeds that you didn't even know.
Right.
That you were watering with all of your faith, with all of your prayers, with all of the love that you're giving. So I would say this is my probably right now my third massive awakening where everything in my life is being questioned. I'm really releasing a lot, especially in terms of like family. Now that I'm doing more ancestral work, it's like I want to be surrounded both, you know, by blood and by chosen family, my soul family. I want that to be people who are also conscious and choosing evolution, because I'm at a stage now where I'm coming up and I can't be pulled down constantly by these other
re-trigger.
Yes.
The old re-triggers.
Yes, that old cycle, that old loop. And there are these people and patterns and habits that I notice, like, oh my gosh, you're going to lead me to that cycle.
Right, exactly.
I see you, and no, I can't, I'm not going to choose that again. So kind of what you said, like that, when people are looking and they're kind of finding direction, it's almost like the crossroads. Because I think it's always a choice. You choose to go to that loop.
Right.
You know, whether it's conscious or subconsciously, you do choose it. Just like you choose suffering.
Right.
You're choosing it because you're choosing to go around that loop again. So to see it, have awareness, and be like, oh, that's a part of it that's connected. I don't want to do that.
Right.
I'm going to remove myself. Right. Choosing differently. So it's like, that's where I'm at, is I'm aware of these other awakenings that have been so profound in my life.
Yeah.
I'm aware I'm in one.
Yeah.
I'm aware of the cocoon that's around me. Right. And I feel like the cocoon is a womb that I'm going to be reborn. And I can really create and manifest from this space. I might not see it right now, but I can start to dream and vision it, and it will be soon. So that's the amazing part of the void, is there's so much creative potential. I feel like the void is fertile.
Do you feel inspired in this stage?
So I didn't for 6 months. Did not feel inspired.
What are you feeling?
Now when I wasn't feeling inspired.
Or when it was that point, when you knew you were like fully in the void.
I felt like it was almost a kind of a sense of relief, because it's like I've been here before.
Okay.
So a little bit of fear, because it's like, oh, this is a mapless place. There's no map here. Right. It's not gonna, even though I've been here before, the terrain is different.
It's a new map.
Right. It's level, you're on now level 3.
Yeah. Right.
So this is now a different, think of it literally like a video game. You're on a new level. Yeah, you gotten through those other ones, but this is right. And you can kind of use your skills and those little coins that you've gathered. Those are your life skills.
Yeah.
And your core truths and stuff like that. Once you realize that, it's really helpful. But it's still this place of, I don't want to say there's no guides, but you are the guide. So your intuition is kind of the compass, and you're like, okay, my feeling is guiding me forward. What feels good, what doesn't. Right. And so there's that discernment that's really needed. But I feel like once I realized I was in the void, there was relief. There was definitely this feeling of, I want this to end sooner, right? Which prolongs the process. So it's this awareness of not being that saboteur, right? Not being that victim, but moving away from that and into that realm of almost that magical consciousness. Right? Being aware of magic is real. My energy is going to control the outcome of these situations.
Being an observer.
Right. And then being a creator in that. Like, okay, so I'm going to create a situation, a scenario in which there is peace and joy and love and harmony. So once I realized that, I felt like an artist again. I wasn't creating art, but almost like becoming the work of art myself.
Living it, right.
Living it. So it's different. Like, I don't feel inspired in the past. Like I used to work more with my hands, work with different mediums like clay and paint, and really get my ideas out there. I feel like now my art has been my voice and my breath, which is very new for me. But being able to just even vocalize what I'm going through, I feel like it's been a saving grace. Yeah. To be able to say, like, hey, this is happening. Right. Anybody out there?
We're here. We're going through it too. Yeah. And I feel like that, it's so interesting to me how many people are going through the same sorts of things, right? That, it's so similar. Everyone's, is struggling with a battle of some sort, but no one's talking about it. And everyone's walking around, trying to be happy with smiles on their faces and everything, but everyone is battling some sort of demon or something, but it's really the battle with self. You're battling yourself no matter what it is. And going back to the void, I think that in that period, a lot of people struggle with, when you're in this place where you need to connect with joy as your navigator, or what feels good as your navigator, but nothing feels good, right? So what would you recommend for people in a state like that, when we're in this place, we don't feel good, but we know we need to follow what feels good in order to get out? Yeah. How do we, from your experience, what do you think is a good thing to do? So I think even like the duality, the sense of like something's good or bad, we might have to reframe that, because what feels good is going to be so different at different phases in your life. Like, when you're really in the void, what feels good? Just the wind on your face. Right. Like really simple things are going to feel good. Yeah. Like literally just, I'm here right now. That feels good, But
maybe being here doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that spiritual bypassing happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's where spirituality becomes escapism, and you want to just almost use all these tools as like, oh, I'm doing the work, but you're not. You're not looking at shadows and wounds and doing that healing. So I think, reframing what's good, and also maybe instead of seeking like what's good, feeling almost curious about everything that comes up, everything that you're feeling. So I think for me, it's been, like I said, my breath. So remember to breathe. Like close your eyes, take a deep breath, sit somewhere, preferably in nature, but if not, in your room, right? And just take a breath with yourself. And in times when you're in the void, it can, anxiety, right? Depression, all these mood swings, like that's going to come up because everything in your life is up in chaos. So it's normal to have those feelings that other people might deem as negative or bad. But really, if those are gateways to that self-discovery, that excavation of your soul, then maybe it just is, right? And maybe that's, energy I see as just isness. It just is. It doesn't have, it's neutral. It doesn't have a necessarily positive or negative charge until we give it that. So to feel just what's coming up, and then you can maybe put a label on it. Oh, I'm feeling guilty for some reason. I'm feeling angry. And when I sit with that, I realize there's fear there. And when I sit with that fear, what's causing me to feel that fear?
Right. Just
maybe
continuing asking questions to yourself.
And that's shadow work.
Yeah.
So shadow work is when you're in the void and you're faced with shadows, look at them. And get curious and ask those questions, because that's how you find out who you are.
Right.
And what you like, what you don't.
Work. It really is work. And, I think about people that don't have any idea about really like what's going on. Like the average person who's not in tune with their intuition or spirituality or anything, and what happens? That's when we go into matrix type living, right? Yeah. And then people just, they get medicated. They don't know what's going on, but this is something that happens to everybody. Yeah. So, but being the healer and, we have to support, but then we have that pressure that we have to hold that frequency and everything.
Right. Right, and I think what you were referring to is almost the dysregulated person is going to have disease, and they're going to seek that treatment from what they know, which is the three-dimensional world that we live in. If you have a problem, go get that symptom treated. And what's great to treat symptoms is the Western medical system. Right. You want to treat a symptom, go to your doctor. They're going to just treat that symptom. Right. You'll come back with 3 more, they'll treat it again. Right. Come back with 10 more, they're going to treat it again. And then you get into that spiral, and that's hard to get out of. Yeah. But I think when you're the real key, and that's where that conscious evolution comes in, when you're starting to notice that dysregulation, and hey, like things are not what they usually are. Yeah. Like when I was in the void, way before I noticed I was in the void, I noticed I was dysregulated, right? And so I'm doing the tools that I know. I'm connecting to my breath, connecting to my body. Our bodies are intelligent, so they will repair and tell us what we need. We just have to quiet and listen and not be so stubborn, and not try to numb. It's so easy to numb, but sit with it. And that's where you start to heal on those subtle levels, spiritual, emotional, mental, which ripples into the physical. Those physical symptoms will ease, and that's where deeper healing can occur. So it is a process that, the holistic spiritual route of living, is not the easy way. It's the hard way, because you're doing the shadow work. You're looking when you want to numb and whatever. Instead of being depressed, you want to express. You're like, let me talk about it. Let me make art about it. Let me sing about it. Let me hold space for others who are going through something similar, and we share about it. So I think that's where spiritual community in those void, when you're in the void, seeking spiritual community can be so helpful for that reason.
Yes, it's important. Yeah. My friend that went to you did a one-on-one healing session. She was raving about your session. I forgot what she said that specifically, but she was just raving. She said it was amazing. And what was that, the soul retrieval one?
That was a soul retrieval. Yeah. So we did an exorcism and soul retrieval, which is when you're pulling out energies that have either been in your system, your DNA, right, inherited from an ancestor, a parent, learned or conditioned through society. And in an exorcism, you get to pull that energy out. You get to see it. We talk about it, you know, beforehand. Like, what is the real big thing, the big pattern, the thing that you notice? We talk about that. Okay, who do you see that in your family line? How do you see that in yourself? I need the person to be aware of it before I can remove it. Once it's removed, then we do a soul retrieval and we bring back the piece of their soul that broke off in that traumatic time, whatever that was for them. It's different for everybody, but to bring that back gives people their sense of power back.
Right.
And they're an active participant the whole time. That's, I think, the really powerful thing about shamanic work is you become the active participant. You're not just receiving, you're in it, because you're, a lot of times, people who seek any kind of shamanic work are very highly intuitive, very empathic, psychic, you know, and believe in the magical consciousness of life and get to journey and vision with the practitioner. So yeah, I think it's awesome when you see people come into a session one way and then get to leave and be like, I'm free of that. Like that's all it took was for me to just talk about it, feel it, process it, and push it out myself. It's really beautiful.
Good work. So another thing I've been wondering, is this what we're experiencing and these others in my, a lot of close people in my life are experiencing very similar things. I wonder if this is like a collective thing that's happening, or is it just, you know, my reflection, right? Reflecting back to me what's going on. But it does seem to be that there is a big collective shift, big collective change that's taking place. It's almost like so many different facets of things are different. Everything is still the same at the same time, but it's different. If this makes sense.
Yeah, like the timeline hopping. Yeah. So there, you know, Dolores Cannon talks about this, and I think she's an amazing channeler to be able to witness just her speaking, you know, past YouTube videos, you can find her stuff. But she kind of talks about, and there's many other people, there's a book, The Celestine Prophecy, that talks really in depth about it.
That was one of my first and favorites that really put me onto this sort of stuff.
I just read that recently and it blew, because it was what I was experiencing and have experienced in times of awakening, that it just is like, but they talk about you reach this critical mass, right? That the collective consciousness reaches this critical mass where we can no longer sustain the violent, aggressive energy that's been present on planet Earth for 10,000 plus years, you know. It's been a very long time. And what a lot of spiritualists are kind of talking about now is we're moving away from that violent, aggressive energy into more of like instead of the patriarchy, more of a matriarchy, a feminine-centered society and way of living in which we respect the earth as our mother, respect the children of earth as sovereign, beautiful, divine beings, and where we respect our bodies and, you know, as women, our wombs, as women, sisterhood, you know, because women are portals. And I think, yes, and I think there's a reason for the patriarchy. In the sense to suppress, to primally suppress women, the magic of woman, right? And so I think what's happening now is there's like this crumbling, similar to how we're kind of in the void. And you kind of said like these frequency holders. I think those that are that, you know, naturally, I think all women are the beings that are feeling this shift happening, where they're feeling the death of what was on our planet. And it looks horrifying, right? When you take that bird's eye view and you see what humans are doing to each other, it's tragic, it's disgusting. But then you zoom in and you start to see, oh, there's so much fear there. There's so much anger. There's so much bitterness. And Similar when we do shadow work on ourselves, you can see like I hold that too. We all hold the frequency of war within us. Whenever we battle with our own consciousness, exactly. Yeah. And we have this ability to create, and so we do sometimes create suffering for ourselves and others. Obviously there's levels to this, and the horrors can be horrible, or it can be just mild enough that you're only sabotaging yourself and relationships, which is also horrible. But I think what's happening now is we're moving away from that aggression into this era of enchantment, this era of magic, in which those that are frequency holders are becoming more aware of their psychicness. We're all telepathic and have the ability to be so, right? We're all creators and have the ability to manifest our reality instantly. And so we're becoming aware of that power. And it's almost how I describe it is like we're becoming, as we're moving away from that patriarchy into the matriarchy, that goddess-centered, divine, mother-centered society and way of living. From that, we see that all consciousness is alive. And it's a part of mother. It's all a child in creation of a mother goddess, right? We're moving away from that masculine god into that feminine, right? So it's the divine feminine rising, rising within women, rising within the world. And from that, we're realizing that magic is real and that we need to be a part of that. Like, we're interconnected with it. We need to plug in to that network, similar to the mycelia of the world, plug in, tune in, and help her. She can't raise the frequency on her own because all of her children need to raise with her. And we need to recognize that plants have the same beauty that we have, that animals, that we're all interconnected.
How do we tune in?
How do we tune in? I think we have to realize that we're not superior beings. We've taken the role as dominions in destroying the earth. We've taken that role, even just in our use of plastic, and you can go on, in our use of everyday items. We're destroying the earth. So first recognizing that, and then choosing differently. Choosing, breaking patterns. I think more realistically, it's working with local communities, working with others who agree and not necessarily agree, but also inhabit these core truths that you inhabit and know to be real, that are working to save the earth and repair and restore her, whether that's energetically, through grid work, through crystal work, whether that's through sonic frequency, using sound waves, through mass meditation. I think also just healing ourselves.
Do a mass meditation, like here in the park or something.
Yeah. They say at 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. those are the cusp times to be able to tap into the collective global consciousness.
Why those times?
I guess because it's you're kind of on the cusp of time, like the witching hours, typically midnight to 3 a.m. So I guess you're coming into that time when the veil's thin, and so your intentions really, I guess, rooted into the earth and can kind of spread. I'm sure anytime you're intentional, it works just as powerful, but to really tap into maybe others that are also aware of that. But yeah, I think we're moving into an era of enchantment, and those of us that know in our hearts that there's this more out there and that we can be doing more with our bodies and our minds and our spirits, we're feeling this destruction of everything else even more because we're the ones that are aware of it. So many people you say this to, they think you're crazy. They don't want to hear anything else you have to say.
That's for sure.
So that's step one, is others being open to even hearing something different than they've always been taught, to come out of that conditioning and see the programming like, oh my God, that was in a movie and then they taught me that. And then in school I was taught this and you start going down, connecting the dots. You feel like a conspiracy theorist and you want to wear a tinfoil hat, but then you're like,
oh, this makes sense.
Yeah. And you start to see, oh, how I was taught actually isn't the only way. And I can try something different and what feels good. So I think a lot of people are experiencing that. And I know seasoned healers and practitioners that are also in that void and just tuning into themselves. and maybe taking a break from working with others now, because it's like, hold on, there's something here in my channel that needs to be purged before I can hold that space for somebody else.
That's where I've been lately, because I've just been going hard, you know, for years since initially opening, and then once I moved to this space and everything, just, you know, full force reopening and everything. And then I'm like, you know, this is my energy field feels like. So I'm like, all right, I just gotta pull it back a little bit. But it's been really interesting because in this, I don't like it. In this period of rest, I don't like it. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? I'm just trying to take it easy. And I guess I've just been going so hard for so long that it feels abnormal.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that a lot of us go through, all in this work mode, especially here in New York, right? All about work. And this is, you know, being disconnected from Earth and being in that energy, in that divine feminine energy, in that receiving mode. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, because rest will feel hard when you've never understood what rest really is. Maybe it's not sleeping or taking time. Maybe it is doing something that you enjoyed doing when you were 10 or 11 or 12 and doing that again and being like, do I still like making beaded bracelets or braiding my hair or wearing funky colors? Like, what's gonna bring up the dopamine here? You know, because that's really what it is. It's you need to be able to rest and then balance it with something that is really uplifting. You know,
it's almost like the rest energy. For me, it feels stagnant, and it shouldn't. It should feel restorative and energizing. Though I do feel much better. I mean, because I was going, you know, I work at the nursing home as well and everything. So working, you know, 7 days a week and like just plowing through from one job to the next, to the next, to the next. And then two, being in, you know, the energy of a light worker, energy worker, you're also, you know, we're not giving our energy. It's coming through us, but it's still, you know, you need to take time to, but it's just a weird experience lately. It is.
Well, like you said, you're almost processing what's going through your channel.
Yeah.
I think also, what you were saying before, you were talking about the rest. You had mentioned
just going straight,
right? So it might be almost burnout too that you're experiencing,
right? I didn't know,
like compassion fatigue. So they talk about this when I was a social worker. They talked about when you're in the position of being in any helping profession. So this can happen, especially when you're in a nursing home. You're working, you're giving care to others, but then you're also a spiritual healer. So you're giving to others. Then you're also an entrepreneur. So you're giving to the community. You know, it's like, where does your cup get filled? But with compassion fatigue, you're giving and giving and giving. There needs to be that time of reception. Yeah. You know, so that's where I think that rest might be uncomfortable, because your stores of energy have been depleted. Yeah. And that's where earth energy comes in and can just fill you right up.
Yeah. But it's always been, it's funny, even though I've been going full force, it's never really felt like a drain, sort of. Like, it was always like I didn't have a choice. Like, I'm totally inspired. I am doing this. It's exciting. This is magic. I'm living my dream. And it was like that for like all these years and everything. And then it's interesting when you get to this point of, oh, I'm living my dream. You know, and you wake up and it's like, oh, I'm living my dream. And then like, oh, I'm living my dream. And then eventually, like, that becomes like your baseline.
Right. You plateau into the dream almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so that's like where I am now, kind of in the void in my dream. You know, living my dream, if that makes sense. Yeah. Which is a totally different roadmap than before. But still the same unknown territory.
Right.
And yeah. So it's
everything you ever wanted, you have it. But but you're still not feeling,
well, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of it. Most of it. Right. Yeah. But there's this aspect of like, as a little girl, if you were to meet your little girl, she'd be like, what?
We would just be painting away together.
And she'd be so happy. So there's this version of you that has already achieved that success that you thought. And I feel like that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, I'm in like a now what?
Now what?
Now what? Like, what do I desire? What's interesting? What do we do from here? I think we even had that conversation about, like, in terms of offerings and things. Like, I feel like I've done it all. Not I've done it all, because that's not possible. But, like, I feel like I've done all the things that were so inspiring that I would be like, oh my gosh, I want to do this thing. I did it.
Right.
And now what? Like, what's this next level of energy going to allow me to do? Right. Like, I feel like I'm expanding. Like flying. Levitating. And, like, that would be awesome. Yeah. Like, I feel like that's what, as frequency holders of this new era of enchantment and magical consciousness, it's like, what is our position? Yeah. Is it to almost exit the matrix? Like, I don't want to leave yet. Like, I feel like you don't want to leave the matrix yet? Maybe leave the matrix, but, like, that idea of ascension and just being like, oh, I'm somewhere else now, and I'm living in this 5D realm, or I'm, like, living, this higher consciousness. Right. In the physical body. We can't, we're still human. Right. We're still flesh. Yeah. But in the Celestine prophecy, they kind of talk about there's a certain cusp point, right? You reach that critical mass in yourself where you then dematerialize physical form and become pure energy. That's how they describe it, because they don't see it happening, but they see the person kind of disappearing. And there's been stories of ancient yogis and people in Tibet that have just disintegrated. Well, I guess they left that timeline. Right. And then they, ascended to a different timeline. And I feel like there's still this part of me that, like, I don't know if it's a need. Like, I feel like there's a need to be here right now. Like, okay, well, that's good. We yes. I'm not leaving it yet. But, like, this timeline still needs repair, is how I feel. Like, we're still in this violent, aggressive energy. Like, that needs to be purged. Yeah. And if I'm somebody that can do exorcisms and extractions, maybe that's my role now, So I think, in the void, it's hard to see that, like, collective mission. I think that's been my question mark. My personal and collective mission has been a question mark as of the last 6 months. And I felt so sure about it at every other time in my life. Yeah, that's what's so now weird. It's like, I feel like I'm going back to the basics. Like, I've been calling myself an artist. Like, I've been calling myself just a practitioner without any labels. Okay. Just, I'm a practitioner. They're like, of what? Of everything. Right. It's like, I am here in the school of earth and life, and I am just here to be a guide and a reflection for you. Yeah. And then that sounds way more woo than anybody wants to hear, but it's this idea of, I've worn the labels. I've been in certain roles in my spiritual career that now I feel I'm evolving past those too. Yeah. So who am I now? Am I just a woman living in these turbulent times? Yeah. And is that enough for me? Like, maybe it is. To just be a powerful woman, a powerful, awakened, aware woman who's, fueling this magical consciousness. Like, that sounds really dope. That does. That sounds beautiful. Yeah. And if that were my role, then what is my responsibility? Then you start to see, like, what can I take accountability for? What's realistic for me to take accountability for and help, restore the earth as a mother frequency. Yeah. So I think in that, I've been noticing I've definitely been more inclined to meet with just women, to have, like, a small circle of women, to have this, like, sisterhood community that I can share these things with, because we aren't alone. We're all feeling it. Yeah. And you can start to feel crazy if you do stay alone. Yeah. If you stay alone, the walls start to close in on you. Yeah. And I've seen that a lot of people who are in the process of spiritual awakening, who very easily can just, write it off as mental illness. Yeah. And, like we said, go back into that loop. Right. Stay in the 3D. Stay in that, like, suffering, created suffering. So to be aware of both paths, and to be aware of this new third path, and be at the crossroads. Which two paths? The old path? The old path. The new path? Maybe the old path, the path I'm on now, which is, like, the uncertain path. And then the totally new one that I haven't even thought about, but that's there. And somebody else made it. Like, that's where, like, this idea of, like, faith and destiny and fate comes in. Like, somebody else has paved that path for me. and it's my probably my true path, right?
Yeah,
And
like your highest self
like
path.
my soul path,
Soul
maybe,
path, okay.
something like that, where I am choosing every choice. Obviously, you either get on the path or you get off the path. So it probably looks like that. But I'm so aware of the old path and aware that I don't want to be on that. So choosing constantly, I feel myself sometimes like magnetically pulled, and you're like, nope, we're staying here on the uncertain path. But then you don't want to be there either, because you're eager to be like, that one looks beautiful,
right?
And it looks really stable. Somebody else built it. You know, this is a foundation from the divine.
Then we get back to trust. We go to trust and trusting. I always think about that scene from Indiana Jones. You ever see those movies?
Yeah.
Where I guess he has the whatever it was, the
crystal or
the crystal.
One? Okay, it was few.
But he has it, and he goes to take the step, and there's no path, and he steps, and when he stepped, then the path appeared. You know, all those quotes and everything. But having that faith, having that trust, and knowing the path will appear.
Yeah,
you don't know where you're going,
and it's like diminishing all the fear that's there. So I feel like that's also in the void is being aware of the fear and not letting it feed off of your life force energy, not letting it dull your shine, you know, your spark. Right? If we're all a spark of consciousness, not letting it dull that, but letting it amplify it. You know, let's sit with the fear, you know, and maybe tune it down, you know, dial it down and dial up the faith. Right. You know?
Yeah, that's a big one that I talk about with clients with, you know, who you're listening to as far as your inner voice. You know, the voice of fear is not the voice of your highest self.
Right.
Yeah. And intuition and what's next? We don't know.
We don't know. But I'm like ready for whatever happens. Yeah. You know, like I feel like I'm at a point where it's I'm seeing possibility and potential, and I'm just like, yeah, man.
Yeah, we're ready for it.
Bring it on, kind of thing. Because that's another part of the void. Like you've died so many times that you're just like, well, if it's another death, I can welcome that. You know, if it's a shedding of everything I've ever known, I've done that before, so that's okay. You know, and if it's a rebirth, beautiful. Like I'll be ready for that. You know, I'll trust in that. So yeah, it's this idea also of being really open, but not vulnerable. Like not an open where these other things can come in. It's
open and surrender. I like to think that like open and surrendering that I accept what is here, what's coming. I accept whatever, you know, is meant for me, however hard it may be. And in that, when we're in that vibration, you know, it really is a freeing vibration, and you're releasing fear when you're in that, and then usually it isn't so bad.
Right, because you get to liberate that part of yourself that operated from the fear. Yeah, it's like that your like limited belief system, right? It's like when you take that away, now you're operating from your truth, and from your center, from your love. You know. So it's beautiful when you can see it happening, but it's unfortunate a lot of people don't see it as it's happening, you know. And I think that's what speaking upon it is going to help
and that's
shed light on.
Important, and just educating and you know, having sessions that, you know, just educate people on these topics that are unfamiliar, you know, and to share, you know, similar experiences. I'd love to do a session with more people, you know, experiencing these things, because I know there's just so many. Well, thank you so much for coming by today. And where we're going, we don't know.
We don't know, but we're excited.
But it's going to be good things. Yeah. Any last things that you want to share before we close?
No, I think just, staying curious about yourself and constantly letting yourself be rediscovered. You know, unveiling these parts of yourself. It's not scary. It might feel scary for a moment. Then you look at it and you get to be like, wow, I did that thing. Yeah. What was the big deal? You know? So I think the biggest thing is having courage to be who you are, to know who you are, and to keep walking forward. Even if that path isn't there, just to know that wherever the path is, you're going to land somewhere. Like you are guided and protected. So I think that's the biggest part of it. Even in the void, it might feel like there's no guides. There might be no maps, but you are protected and you're there for a reason. It's that womb, it's that cocoon. It's transforming you. And trust it.
Amazing.
Yay.
Thanks so much for sharing. I appreciate it so much. And I look forward to doing some group sessions, you know, maybe towards the end of the summer.
Yeah.
Maybe get a women's circle on there or whatever you feel inspired to do.
I love that.
And in the meantime, people looking to contact you can contact through Moon Goddess.
Yes.
Or your Instagram. And if they're interested in doing sessions, what type of sessions are you offering here at the studio? The one-on-ones? So
the one-on-ones, it's a shamanic healing session, will be the broader term, but it'll specialize in anything from the exorcism, extraction, to that negative entity removal, cord cutting, soul retrieval, any kind of integration, somatic healing, or spiritual elevation, like that, an activation of some kind. I think a shamanic healing session is beautiful for all of those.
Yeah. And if people want one-on-one past life regression,
that can be something we do too. And journeying as well. One-on-one journeys. Anything really that's going to help you discover a part of your soul that you have yet to discover. That's, I feel like, the essence of a shamanic session. It's being open to experience that magical consciousness, that cosmic, that you know that you are, and you are also a part of, and you get to see it and feel it, and then you take those codes and into your body, and divine stuff happens. Really deep healing. So
amazing.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Cassidy.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go with like this angle. Wait, let me just sit for a second and be still and look at you. Okay. Don't make me laugh. Okay. Okay, like we're just talking. So testing. I got an egg and mushroom and an onion sandwich, and it was strictly mushroom and onion with no egg. Oh, no. So I have a little agita now. Okay.